The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliate stations coast to coast present
Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue.
The 0-2, swing and a miss, strike three, blew it past it.
Discussing baseball, good drinks, and food.
And you got your honey mustard?
I love mustard.
With Ted Hicks, Todd Vandenberg, and Lee Vowell.
Well, big deal. I am very professional.
Every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. on the Happy Hour Network.
And welcome to Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue, NFL Playoff Edition with Todd, Ted, and Lee. Hopefully Ted has joined us. Like us on Facebook, follow us on the Twitter at Baseball Beer BBQ, and read us on the happyhournetwork.com or our blog site, baseballbeerbbq.com. We will be joined in just a few moments by Sharona of NFLfemale.com, Game Over Sports, and other various outlets to talk NFL playoffs. And Ted, if you are there, and hopefully this is Ted, will you tell us who else we have to thank for replaying our wonderful show?
Sure, without a doubt. Love to tell you who we share our voices and our thoughts and our comments every week with on, what originates out of the Happy Hour Network also airs on NGSC Sports that powers us on the iHeartRadio app. You can hear us on Spreaker. You can hear us on I-95 Sports Network, Back Sports Pages, RS Sports, of course, iTunes, Arena Sports Networks, XRP Radio in the UK, just to say a few. And Todd, I think we have a special friend who also likes to tweet us out.
Indeed we do, Ted. If you have an Android that's malfunctioning, if your BB-8 isn't rolling anymore, the only place to take it in the universe is Computer Repair NC at CJ Computers NC on the Twitter, 919-653-8496. Stand with the Republic. Go to Computer Repair NC.
And that's our show. So anyway, we do have a little bit of breaking news. We also have a couple of sound bites from Wild Card weekends past. A couple of sound bites from radio guys doing play-by-play, which are really great calls, I think, and we'll play those in just a bit. But breaking news, of course, Marshawn Lynch will not play against Minnesota tomorrow, where it's supposed to be 0 degrees and wind chill of negative 25 at times. About to get on the bus and decided he wasn't going to make the trip. So not really sure what's going on there, but it could be that he knew he wasn't going to be able to go, and therefore he wasn't going to take the trip and be able to play with hurt abdomen in 0 degree temperature. So we'll see if more comes out of this as well. College football national championship is on Monday at 8:30 ESPN. As Todd and I, and I'm sure Ted and Todd and I talked about this last week, but we've definitely wrote about it. NGSC Sports, we wrote about it. ESPN may owe advertisers $20 million because of low ratings, because the NCAA is too stupid to realize, and they're doing it again in 2016, playing their semifinal games on December 31st. I wrote about this in a joking way for NGSC Sports, but is it really a matter of, is the NCAA really maybe just trying to keep the ratings low so they don't have to pay out so much in the next TV contract? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but what other reason do they have for doing it?
I think they're arrogant enough to think that they can establish New Year's Eve as their day. And, it kind of has been. New Year's Day has been their day, and they want to, now it's going to be New Year's Eve. It's going to be a new tradition. It's like, clearly it's not. Why would you look at a 36% drop in the ratings and think that, it'll work? I don't. I felt like I was channeling Rob Steele there for a second. That's absolutely ridiculous that they haven't just backed off. I mean, ESPN is so happy that they had to set aside ad blocks in the championship game to pay back their advertisers, to make sure that they had extra ads to run during the national title game, which should get really good ratings because it's Monday Night Football, after all. Why, as we've all talked about, why wouldn't you put it earlier, a week earlier than they did on a Saturday? Why didn't you do it that Saturday when there's virtually no competition other than, the also ran bowl games? I mean, absolutely.
Or play it on the first.
I think it's arrogance.
Play it on the first. As you said, they've established that day. Why not? It doesn't make any sense. Play it on the first. Nothing else is going on. So Ted, if you are the ESPN king, what words are you using to describe the NCAA currently?
Foolish. Foolish.
Really? You're going to hold it back? Just foolish? You're not saying
just foolish. That's really it. Because not only that, but if you listen during the season when I think it was a UCF game was going to be played on Thanksgiving, and there's a certain level of arrogance where college sports, which is big, it's not big in New York. So I'm coming from a different perspective. But when you're hearing some of these teams saying, hey, we're going to play our game, our local rival game on Thanksgiving. Well, no, that's for NFL. And it's kind of like it's the same where, hey, we're going to do this on New Year's Eve. No, it's so easy. And I can't believe they're still going through with this for next year. But I think on 2017, they're going to make that switch from New Year's Eve to New Year's Day or thereafter. It's foolish, it's arrogant, and once again, another big loss. Another loss for ESPN. Yeah,
that's true. The thing is that they could change. They change this year to year. It's not like it's set in stone for 2 years. They just immediately after this week. It doesn't make any sense. It really makes no sense to me at all. And I like college football, but it makes no sense to play those games on the evening, at least, of December 31st, because nobody's watching. We had the game on. I was at a party, and we had the game on, but it was in the background. We weren't there to watch the game. It was just going on. So I guess we counted. But, if there's 25 people at a party, do they count 25 people at a party, or they count how many televisions are being played, right? So who knows? So I'll throw this out. Who's going to win? Alabama, Clemson. Todd?
I think Alabama will win, and just to stay with that whole thing, viewership is down 36%. How many of the people that were, quote-unquote, viewing it were viewing it like you were viewing it? It's in the background, so they're not really focused. So did it really have much of an impact on a lot of people who saw the game anyway? Was it that memorable? It was like, oh, I wonder what happened there. Anyway, I think Alabama is just too much. I think it's going to be a really tough game because I think most of the country is underestimating Clemson and the speed and strength of their athletes. They match up really well with Alabama. And, of course, they've got the mobile quarterback, and that can give Alabama problems in the past. Hasn't this year, basically, but historically it can give them problems. So, and that's the reason why I'm going with Alabama. They rush off the end much better than they ever used to. And I think they'll do a fairly good job of containing that. So I think Alabama by 4.
Yeah, that's what I had. I think I had it 28-24 Alabama. Ted, are you going to watch the game? And do you have go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm not going to watch the game, but the fact that Seth Ryan, who is related to Rex Ryan, who took my Jets out of the playoffs last week, I'm going for Alabama.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I'm going to watch it because I was invited to this get-together on Monday night. So, hopefully it'll be a good game. Hopefully it'll be better than the semifinal game. So we have a lot to get to. Let's just run through the Major League Baseball notes real fast. I don't know how fast this is going to take because we're talking about Hall of Fame voting. The Hall of Fame was announced on Wednesday, I believe it was Wednesday. And Ken Griffey Jr. and Mike Piazza both get in. Piazza's going in as a Met. Griffey, of course, going in as a Mariner. I almost said a Marlin. A Mariner. And, Bagwell missed by 15 votes. Raines missed by 23. Hoffman, in his first time on the ballot, actually came, 67% is not bad first time. Almost a lot of people picked up percentage votes, at least. Musina, Bonds, Clemens, all those guys picked up votes. McGuire didn't make it his 10th try, so he's off the ballot. Ted, your take on Hall of Fame voting that was announced this past Wednesday?
An open and shut case on Ken Griffey Jr. I don't know if we'll ever be able to, or at least I haven't heard, the 3 writers that did not vote for him. Piazza, it was a long time coming. Glad he did very well for both organizations, Dodgers and Mets. Glad he's going in as a Met. And, kind of excited for the folks like, Tim Raines that will be on the horizon, depending on the competition in the next few years. And Trevor Hoffman, definitely, I see him getting in within, next 3 years.
Yeah, Todd?
Yeah, that seems reasonable for Hoffman. I do have news on those 3 writers. They have been deported to a world where there is no baseball. So, oh my God, what idiots! Piazza, he obviously deserves it. We all said that he deserved it, but to me, it's interesting that finally, one of the guys where there was a little bit of question of PEDs, nothing ever proven. It's all strictly been rumor with Piazza. He's in, which, like you said, Bagwell's his vote total went in. Well, Bagwell's going to get in too, because he was under that same cloud of, gee, I wonder, suspicion, BS, as Piazza was in. Well, Bagwell's going to get in. So all these guys who kind of had that, I don't know, they're going to get in. Clemens, on the other hand, Mr. Bonds, on the other hand, they picked up some, but they're not going to get in, and like we were saying last week, until the Hall of Fame comes out with a rule and says, ignore this. Don't take this into consideration. If they do that, then they'll be in. There'll still be plenty of people who wouldn't vote them in, but that's the only way they're ever going to get in. But I really like the fact that this opens the door for people who are maybe iffy, because until they voted Mike Piazza in, there's a lot of guys out there. Big Papi, people would wonder, I don't know. It's like they're gonna. I think they're going to be a little more. I don't know if it's forgiving, because there's nothing to forgive if you haven't done anything. But I think they'll just forget the rumors, and just concentrate on the facts, which is a really, really good thing.
Yeah, and the question remains whether Ortiz gets in because he's a DH. Edgar Martinez much higher WAR than a lot of people in the Hall,
right.
Especially more than Ortiz. Most, really just a DH, a really, really good one, but he's not getting in the Hall of Fame either at this point, unfortunately.
So much of it is a popularity game, though. And
that's true.
Big Papi's got the name, and and he's got the flashy stat, the homers.
Swagger.
So, that's swagger counts. It's stupid, but it does. It does. It does with the voters, unfortunately.
Yeah. But Jimmy Swaggart's in the Hall of Fame. I had no idea. It was funny because it's Happy Hour Network Hall of Fame. Ted got in and I didn't, and I was thinking, why do people like him more? I felt wrong, honestly. So a couple other Major League Baseball notes. Alex Gordon re-signs with Kansas City. The Dodgers signed Japanese pitcher Kenta Maeda, 15-8. Some health issues, possibly. The Dodgers even say maybe in 2 or 3 years he'll need surgery, but they're taking a chance on him now. Scott Kazmir, who took a couple of years off, really, and has bounced back and been a pretty good pitcher the last couple of years, signed with the Dodgers as well. A really strange one to me, Mets lose Paul DePodesta to the Cleveland Browns, of all places. Ted, what are your thoughts on that?
Paul DePodesta, without a doubt, hands down, the smartest man in America when it comes to analytics, and I don't know, can he help change? I, like a lot of people, thought that DePodesta was the successor for Sandy Alderson within the next, 2 years. I wrote an article about it about 4 years ago, about how this was set up, and of course I was wrong, as usual. But DePodesta on the, leaving the Mets, does it leave a gap? Yeah, it leaves a huge gap, but it creates something kind of interesting for Cleveland because, of that organizational structure that's being put together now. It's stunning. It's stunning, and I want to see how long he stays. Is this just something like, a 2 or 3 year deal, or how they plan to really use analytics in the NFL? and how it transcended, our sport of the MLB into NFL. So I'm still kind of scratching my head, but this guy is sharp. I mean, let's throw out his tenure as Dodgers GM, just being a front office guru and whiz and scout and, player development type person. This guy's really, really good.
Hey, and I'll say this. Sorry to jump in, Todd, real fast. Ted had a point about how, he thinks he could have been Alderson's successor. Well, he is going to the Browns, so he's going to be fired within 2 years because they make constant changes. So he'll be right back for the Mets.
That's exactly what I was going to say is, we know how it's going to work out in the Browns. It won't because it's the Browns. It has nothing to do with DePodesta. So
that's right.
He'll be back in baseball soon.
That's right.
I just have one final comment about DePodesta. And I was very doubtful when he came on board with the Mets, but he did his job basically remotely from San Diego, which I thought was kind of strange. But it worked. It worked. So this guy's, he's a bright one.
That is strange. I didn't know that. Working remotely in a Major League Baseball, if we're working remotely when we're doing our schlub jobs, it's one thing. But if you're one of, 30 people doing your job and you're doing it remotely, that's kind of strange. I had no idea he did that. So moving on to the NFL. We're here to talk the NFL, of course, today because it is the NFL playoff version. Peyton Manning has been named the starters for the Broncos, which, almost for the coach at least, seems like a no-brainer because if you play Osweiler and you don't play Manning and you lose, then you're going to get blamed for playing Osweiler. At least if you play Peyton and then he does horribly, gets hurt, unfortunately, whatever, Osweiler comes in and you still lose, you don't get blamed. So it's the safe call for the coach. But, looking back at last week, Peyton came in and, he was 5-9, but the team looked offensively, they looked sharper. They looked like they could move the ball on almost anybody. They looked so much better with Peyton in the game. I'm not saying he's going to have a great game, but they looked better. Right, Todd?
Oh, yeah. The running game was much better in the second half. He had at least 2 offside calls that he drew them off on, if not 3. Right. He is a disruptive player for the defense, which is very unusual. And all the Tom Brady lovers out there, I know Tom does the same thing. But, he's one of the few guys out there who has mastered things like, the hard count, things like that, and the way he audibles. And like they were even saying during the game, that one of the biggest reasons that the running game worked so much better in the second half is because Peyton was checking off that running play and going into this running play. It wasn't audibling out of a run to a pass. He's audibling to different plays. And Osweiler how is he going to know enough about football compared to Peyton Manning? Or a guy like Aaron Rodgers, or, he just hasn't played long enough. There's nothing on him, although the rumor is that he is about as smart as the blackboard rather than what's on the blackboard. But that's besides the point. That's besides the point. It's like 5 turnovers in the first half, 20 points in the second half. Gee, which quarterback do I go with? It's not about how well he passed the ball, although he did look much better. It's how you run the offense. That's the quarterback's job. And obviously, when Peyton's healthy, who would you put in there instead? Certainly not Mr. Osweiler. So,
Ted?
Brock is the future. Brock is definitely the future. But, we all can see with the Black Monday firings, football is about the now, winning now. So what was good is Elway and friends get to kick the tires on Osweiler for 5-6 weeks. They see what they have for the future because this guy's going to be a free agent, and you're in the playoffs. So you're in the tournament, and you can't go 1 and out. I'm sorry, and I'm not saying that Osweiler will give you that opportunity, but who knows? And who's game tested? It's been highly documented. Peyton Manning's 6 failures in the playoffs, but when it comes down to who do you want in there, you're gonna want Manning in there, who's basically doing what he did last weekend. He didn't kill you with the stats, but just his presence of being in there, and overall presence of mind to trick the defense and to help orchestrate the offense. So I think the coach made the only decision he could make after kicking the tires on Osweiler. Now, granted, if Osweiler was the second coming of Tom Brady, then it would be a totally different narrative. But Manning in there, we're going to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and the narrative would be, obviously, would special narrative going on if Manning. And look, the Broncos are not going to win it with Manning. They're going to win it with their defense. And we saw what happened with the Dolphins and Patriots last week. The Patriots are obviously missing some offensive skill players, but their line was their line that they're going to have in the postseason, and the Dolphins dominated them. And DeMarcus Ware didn't play in the first matchup, I don't believe, with the Broncos and Patriots. So, the Patriots lost. The Broncos have home field advantage, which I think is huge. If somehow the Broncos can move ahead, and obviously I'm jumping way ahead, but if the Broncos can reach the Super Bowl, even win the Super Bowl with Peyton as their quarterback in a season where he's been hurt and it looked like maybe he wasn't going to even play again, that's a great story for the NFL. I do want to play a sound clip. This is actually from 16 years ago. This happened on Wild Card Weekend. The great thing about Wild Card Weekend is crazy things happen, obviously. And this is one of the more crazy things that happened, I think, on Wild Card Weekend 16 years ago, about 2 days ago.
Do the Titans have a miracle left in them? Christie kicks it high and short. Going to be fielded by Lorenzo Neal at the 25. Pitches it back to Wycheck. He throws it across the field to Dyson.
He's got something.
30,
He's got
40,
something.
50.
He's got it.
40,
He's got it.
20, 10.
He's got it.
End zone. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags on the field. It's a miracle. Tennessee has pulled a miracle.
Which was that was a crazy game. That's the kind of game you want to see as a fan, right? That Music City Miracle.
Oh yeah.
Could you imagine being there for that game?
Yeah. Oh man, that would be awesome. Seriously. Obviously we remember it, and we weren't even there. But I'd be saying until I was like 95, I was at that game when that thing happened. It would be crazy. So I kind of wanted to lead into the AFC games with that. We'll get more into it with Sharona in just about 8 minutes when she is on. We'll talk about the specific games a little bit more in depth. But starting off today, 4:20 game on ESPN, Kansas City Chiefs at Houston Texans. This game, obviously, about 6 weeks into the season, you may have been thrown in jail for being drunk in public if you had said either of these teams was going to make the playoffs. But the Chiefs have now won 10 in a row, and the Texans won their division because it's a god-awful division, honestly. The Jets and the Dolphins did not make the playoffs. But if you put them in that division, they make the playoffs. That's an awful, awful division. Ted, I'll start with you. Your take on this game. You're going to watch it? You're going to be able to watch these games? And who do you think wins? Actually, don't tell me who you think wins. Just tell me what you want to see out of that game.
I won't tell you who I think wins. I expect to see a lot out of Kansas City. I could be one of the better games of this weekend. Kansas City Chiefs and Texans. I know you're scratching your head. You're like, oh, you got all these other great games, and you see the phone is ringing, and I make a comment, and
it's Alex
people want to talk to me.
Gigi Podesta, he's got a job for you, Ted.
Oh my goodness, no, but I expect to see a great turnout performance by the Chiefs. I don't expect too much out of the Texans, but I expect something great out of the Chiefs. And once again, the game manager is going to I will his way. I don't want to say to a victory because then I give up. I think I've already given up who I think is going to win.
Well, maybe not. You could change it real fast and say J.J. Watt ends up at quarterback for the Chiefs, of all people. Something crazy happened.
That would be a wild card.
We will see a J.J. Watt. He's going to run it in today. He's going to run it in for a 1-yard touchdown. No, But
That's possible, actually.
It's the Chiefs and the Texans. I do expect a good game. I'm indifferent on this one.
Yeah, I think it'll be low scoring just because both defenses are really good. And I think if the Texans win and they go up against the Patriots or the Broncos, they won't win. I think the Chiefs have a chance with their defense and just the Andy Reid being the offensive guru that he is. They don't have a great offense, but they have a good enough offense to win with that defense. And I think the Chiefs have a chance against the Broncos or the Patriots. What do you think, Todd?
I think, because they're on this streak, and winning builds winning. I mean, you get that feeling. It's like, man, we're going to do it. A 10-win streak, that's hard to overcome no matter how you're doing it. And like you said, when you're doing it with defense, and like Ted said, with the game manager, and he's played really well in that role, they're an extremely dangerous team. Houston Texans, they have a few extremely dangerous players, and I think there's a big difference there.
Yeah, and we'll get into each of these games a little bit more with Sharona in just about 4 or 5 minutes. Steelers and Bengals also play interesting matchup because the Bengals they're not going to be playing with their starting quarterback, which actually in the playoffs might be a good thing for them. The Steelers defensively playing a little bit better, offensively with Big Ben. They're always a danger in the playoffs because anybody can win in the playoffs when it comes to this point. Seahawks are going to be playing without Marshawn Lynch, as we mentioned. However, I do have the seismic activity of Beastquake to play, and here it was.
Matthew under center, Obamanu goes in motion right to left, turn and hand to Lynch left side, finds a little bit of a hole, keeps his leg moving, he's across the 40, midfield, 45, he's on the run, Lynch, 40, pushes him at 35, look at him go, he's down to 20, 15, he could go, he is going to go, touchdown Seahawks, oh my word, a 67-yard run, Marshawn Lynch, unbelievable! He must have knocked 5 guys down on the way to the end zone.
So, I can tell you exactly what I was doing. I was at work in Redmond, Washington, and I managed a vitamin shop in Redmond, Washington, and I couldn't get out of it, and the Seahawks were playing. And I had a flip phone, and I just kept looking at my flip phone, and I got a text from a guy named Todd Vandenberg, and all it said was, what.a.run. And I had no idea what he was talking about at that time, 6 years ago or 7 years ago, however long it's been. And it's just been, I was like, I wonder what happened. And then, it was crazy. I mean, a registered seismic activity. So Seahawks and Vikings, interesting matchup. The last time the Seahawks played, they did have Thomas Rawls. They do not have Thomas Rawls, but Kristen Michael stepped in and played really well two of the last 3 weeks. The Vikings' offensive line, not that great. Compared to the Seahawks' defensive line, it really comes down to a matter of the defensive line of the Seahawks dominating the Vikings like they did in the first game. I don't care if the Vikings are missing all their defensive players. The Vikings did nothing against the Seahawks on offense. So that's the key to the game. And then the Packers and the Redskins, honestly, at this point, to me, whoever wins that game is going to lose the next game. So does that game even matter? I mean, it's the playoffs, yeah, but Aaron Rodgers is a danger, but they don't have any offensive skill players wide out. Neither of these teams wins the next game, right, Todd?
I absolutely agree. I mean, it's crazy to talk about Aaron Rodgers as being irrelevant, but without Jordy Nelson, he's been kind of irrelevant all season long, and there's no reason to think, why all of a sudden would he get his mojo back in the playoffs? So it'll be a fun game. It'll be a really entertaining game, but the one after that, I don't think it's going to be that fun for whoever wins between the Packers and the Redskins.
Ted, what do you think?
Probably the highest scoring game of this weekend. They're gonna just let it go because, like I said, the following week the winner is gonna get shellacked. That's it. They will.
Yeah, because you're going to Arizona or you're going to Carolina, and neither of these teams should match up well, against the other. So actually, at this point, we are going to be joined by Sharona of NFLfemale.com, Game Over Sports, other great shows that she's on. She's been on with us several times over the different shows that we've had, and she's always a fantastic guest. Sharona, I just want to say again, thanks for being on. And I'm not going to start with an NFL question. I'm actually going to start with a Tennessee Volunteers question, which is the fact that John Jancic is now no longer the DC defensive coordinator at University of Tennessee, which is the biggest news so far. The recruiting class is not big enough to really hold up compared to the last few years anyway. But they had a really good season this year, and big things might happen next year. What do you think about the state of the program currently? Sharona doesn't seem to be able to hear me. Can you guys hear me? You still on?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you.
There may be a issue with Sharona, so let me see if she can get back on. It'll be just a second. Sharona?
Could be blocked. Could be BTR.
I think she's going to try to call back in. It looks like she's going to try to call back in. Hopefully she heard the first question. But anyway, Sharona will be on in just one more second, and we'll talk NFL.
Hey,
but
is she's getting ready to come back on, you forgot, I mean, the Jets aren't playing this week?
I'm not Joel, Ted. I was hoping your Jets would kick butt, honestly. So, Sharona, can you hear me now?
I could hear you. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine. I don't know if you heard my first question.
I did. I think, clearly the Vols have made progress, at least in terms of improving the roster and in terms of wins. There's no question but that last season has to be called a success because of the win-loss, overall win-loss total. However, having said that, Butch Jones simply has to get better against the SEC. He has to win the SEC East this year. You mentioned the recruiting situation. Recruiting is really interesting right now. Guys are moving around and transferring far more than they ever had in the past. And so it's kind of hard to knock Butch Jones in a way. We saw a lot of uproar over Kevin Sumlin losing Kyler Murray, right? So, but yes, clearly the football program appears to be headed in the right direction.
Well, and everybody at least in Tennessee is hoping for huge things next year. I mean, maybe national championship expectations. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. They still have to get by Alabama, but yeah, excellent point.
Florida.
Well, yeah,
that's got to be true. Florida.
I know, but next year they've got Florida at home, and Florida they're losing people left and right, and I know that probably is said by Tennessee fans every year, and Florida ends up winning by a point, but surely next year.
They should have beaten Florida this past year. There's no question whatsoever. They should have beaten Florida in 2015. That is a black eye for Butch Jones.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's held them back this year. They would have won the East. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask you just one more general question about the NFL, and then we're going to break down games, a couple of questions about each game, and then we'll predict after we talk about that who we think might win each game. But what are 2 or 3 storylines that really have stood out to you from the NFL season so far?
Wow. The first one that came to mind was obviously the Greg Hardy situation. Domestic violence has been big in the National Football League for the past couple of years. It goes back to Ray Rice. I know Ray and Janae don't like it that they're the face of that, but, the video evidence that came out changed a lot of people's perception. The other storyline, wow, that's a really hard question. I would think I would need to think about that a little bit more. Maybe most recently, probably what happened with the Indianapolis Colts. I've never seen anything like that in my lifetime. It was absolutely, positively crazy. Chuck Pagano was absolutely fired, and then he wasn't, and so that kind of stands out in my mind. The fall of Andrew Luck, his injury-filled season, that comes to my mind. Obviously, Deflategate was big, and everybody talked about it. and Peyton Manning, you can't ignore the Peyton Manning HGH story. That was obviously big. Now, the news organization that came out with the story is being sued left and right by athletes named in that, and Peyton has indicated he's going to sue as well. So those are the ones that that kind of stick out in my mind, I suppose.
Guys, I'm feeling a little Calvin Johnson-ish today.
Yeah.
And
now that was kind of interesting too.
Totally. But Sharona, welcome to Baseball Beer and Barbecue. This is Ted. As always, happy to speak with you. The question I have is, today's first game features two teams that started the season off poorly, but we're all happy that they've rebounded. The Chiefs have won 10 in a row, and it's become, a big story in the NFL. How do you see today's game playing out? And if the Chiefs win, do you see them having a real chance to make a run at the Super Bowl this year on the strength of their defense?
Yeah, I do. I almost mentioned Andy Reid and the Chiefs when you asked me about big storylines. I talked about this yesterday on my podcast. I just feel like this could be the Chiefs' year. I do think that they're going to win. I think the Bengals are going to win and advance to that next round. And I think that that'll be a good matchup to have Cincinnati and Kansas City, two teams that have traditionally busted, in the playoffs and haven't made it for the Chiefs. It's been a long, long time since they've made it. And the Bengals have made it. They just haven't won a playoff. And so I think that would be great. I think it would be a good matchup. I think it would be great. Alex Smith is having a career year. Alex Smith gets a lot of he gets knocked a lot for his lack of, Alex Smith can lead you to the Super Bowl, in my opinion, absolutely. There's no question in my mind.
And who are we talking about? Who do we think is going to win this happy little festival?
Well, I think the Bengals are going to beat Pittsburgh. I think Kansas City is going to beat Houston. Those are the matchups. I'm not looking, as I recall, those are the matchups in the AFC, the wild card. And then on the other side, you've got the Vikings and the Seahawks. Big news last night, Marshawn Lynch is not going to play. I don't really think it changes things that well. I mean, it's certainly not having a running back of his caliber with the temperatures that are going to be in Minnesota. You would think that the running game would be big for both sides. I like this matchup. I like this game. Very curious to see if Russell Wilson can continue to work his magic. He started out very, very slow. It was a very rough beginning for him, and over the last 7 weeks, his numbers have been just astounding. Just been fantastic. It doesn't surprise me. I've always felt like Russell Wilson was a better quarterback than he got credit for. And then you've got Washington and Green Bay. Green Bay's just not the same team this year. I do not think they're going to beat Washington. I think Washington is going to win that game. You have to get, and that's another storyline we could have talked about in your first NFL question. What Jay Gruden and Kirk Cousins have been able to accomplish in Washington is fantastic.
They really have come on. And by the way, this is Todd and Sharona. It's great to have an actual person on our show instead of us three idiots. So it's really good to have you back on again. But I want to go back to the Bengals-Steelers game. Of course, the Bengals, they don't have Andy Dalton, and that might actually be a good thing considering his playoff record. Do you think they have a better chance of winning because A.J. McCarron, one of these so-called game managers is playing? Okay.
No, I wouldn't say better. I think Andy Dalton was having a great year before, unfortunately, he went down with his, I think it was a thumb injury, hand injury. I think that every season is different and every matchup is different, because if there's anything that's constant in the National Football League, there's change. I think Hugh Jackson has done an absolutely fantastic job with that offense, which is one of the reasons why he's one of the hot names out there for head coaching candidacy. I think that with Andy Dalton, the odds were a little bit greater, that they would win that game. But I think, and let's talk about the injury for the Steelers, not having D'Angelo Williams. That significantly changes things for them. I think A.J. McCarron can operate that offense satisfactorily and can definitely win that game. And I think that he can lead the Bengals. As long as they don't ask him to do too much, he can definitely lead the Bengals to the Super Bowl.
And of course, you're talking about the Steelers, and you already said you feel that they'll still be able to take it. But what exactly is going on with the Steelers? And obviously, losing Williams, I think, really hurts them. But
yes, no question.
Roethlisberger, he's like the anti Andy Dalton. I mean, he comes up big in the biggest games. Do you think that he'll really be the difference in the game, or what exactly? What is this game going to turn on?
Well, I think first of all, both teams they can't turn the football over. I mean that. I know that that's kind of the obvious answer, but it's so true. You have to be protective of the football. Winning third down conversions on offense and preventing the other team from converting on third downs is always key. Both teams are going to need to get a running game going. For the Steelers, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult, maybe than the Bengals. But as we've seen, Gio Bernard has had a pretty good year for the Bengals, but Jeremy Hill has been up and down, very inconsistent this year. I just, but for the Steelers and in their defense, they've got the best wide receiver in the game right now, in Antonio Brown, and they've got behind him, in addition to him, I shouldn't say behind him, but in addition to him, three other pretty darn good wide receivers, and it's really going. The Bengals secondary is pretty good too. So that's probably the best matchup in that game is to watch how and the Bengals defensive back, their secondary coach, he's a hot name in terms of getting that next level job.
When you said the best receiver in the game, I thought been traded to the Steelers, and I had no idea. I got to be a homer.
I've always been a Doug Baldwin fan. I think you know that. I think Lee knows that. What he's been able to accomplish this year does not surprise me. In the past, it's been they've had other guys. Golden Tate was there. Even the last season that Golden Tate was in Seattle, Doug Baldwin was a pretty good flex option in fantasy football. I had him on my roster in several different leagues and was happy to have him. So, what he's been able to accomplish is not surprising to me. I'm very happy for him. A guy who's undrafted free agent, and, you like to see those success stories, but, he's not alone. And it's what has helped him is the emergence of Tyler Lockett. They're absolutely fantastic rookie wide receiver.
Yeah, he definitely came on. I will want to point this out. Chris Carter, of course, a great receiver for the Vikings, actually called Doug Baldwin an appetizer at one point. But now, through 5 seasons, Baldwin actually has 86 more catches and 1,001 more yards and 2 more touchdowns than Chris Carter had at the same point.
Wow.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
So before we jump more into the, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Chris Carter's defense, and he's been very open about this, and it's admirable that he's been so open and so willing to share this. It took him a while to get it. He had some issues off the field, and it was a bit of a rocky beginning for him. And on the flip side, Doug Baldwin didn't have those, and I think that that's a good way to address, how, guys who, solid guys who work hard and go unheralded, can often, do those things where, when you've got, and Chris Carter was a bit of a diva, when he was in the league. And, I think that's a good example of how, a guy who works hard and doesn't play the diva card can do those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, Baldwin's never had a Randy Moss to take any receptions away as well.
That's true, too. But I mean, again, Kearse, Golden Tate, and who was Sydney
Rice, who was always hurt.
Sydney Rice. He was always hurt, but he was a good wide receiver when he was healthy and on the field.
Yeah.
And Doug Baldwin is operating in an offense that was run first.
Exactly.
With beast mode and it still is, except that Marshawn Lynch is not going to play, and they don't. They better hope Christian Michael really is that dude.
I certainly hope he is. Before we get a little bit more into the Seattle Vikings game, let's just go in. I think that as far as the Chiefs Texans, let's predict who wins that. I think the Chiefs are going to win. Todd?
I think the Chiefs win in a blowout. I think Watt will have a good game, but I think the Chiefs destroy the Texans.
And Ted?
Chiefs all the way.
Okay. And Sharona, you had the Chiefs as well, correct?
I've got the Chiefs. I'm not so sure that they will blow them out. Playing in Reliant Stadium is a tough draw. The fan base is right. When the Texans are doing well, that is a tough crowd, and then obviously they're doing well. They're in the playoffs, and I think that having that home field advantage is going to help the Houston Texans. I do think that the Chiefs are going to win this game. The Texans defense is not as good as advertised and as it has been in the past, but it's still a darn good defense.
Yeah, I think they play in a lousy division. I think if the four of us had a team, we might be able to finish second in that division at this point. And then there's the Bengals and the Steelers. I think that the Bengals are going to lose this game, and I don't think it's because I really think it's because the Steelers still have Big Ben, and when it comes to the playoffs, quarterbacks matter. And A.J. McCarron might be a great game manager, and he was at Alabama, but I think the Steelers win. Todd, who do you think?
Well, I think Big Ben will be picked up before the game and won't play because there's a Big Ben alert out in Cincinnati. Actually, I think the Bengals will actually wind up winning the game in one of these ugly, close things. I think D'Angelo Williams' absence really, really hurts the Steelers in this game.
Yeah, I think they're able to overcome it a little bit with the passing game. Ted?
I'm rooting for the Bengals to pull this one out. I got a feeling it's going to be the Steelers so that Marvin Lewis can continue the tradition of, I guess. I was going to say something, but Sharona's on the line. Let's just put this.
Oh, please go ahead. Don't hold back on my account.
Yeah, exactly.
I won't.
No, I just expect the Bengals to be the Bungles. It's just expected. So Steelers win.
And Sharona, your pick?
I think the Bengals are going to win.
Okay.
I think it'll be a tough game. I don't think it'll be high scoring, but I don't think it'll be low scoring either. I would say probably in the 20s, like maybe 28-21, 28-24, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because the higher the scoring, I think the more the chance the Steelers have to win because the Bengals' defense is good, and if they're giving up that many points, that's a problem.
Completely agree.
So getting back to the Seattle Vikings game, because it's all just about the Seahawks as far as I'm concerned this weekend. So Seattle obviously has had another great second half of the season. They have one ugly loss to the Rams because the Rams just have
swept them this year. Yeah,
they did. They had that defensive line, and it just whatever reason it just plays totally against the Seahawks. Against nobody else, but against the Seahawks. So the Seahawks have already beaten the Vikings once this season in a blowout. Obviously, the Vikings were missing some key defensive players. But if you were a Vikings fan, what do you fear most about this matchup?
Teddy Bridgewater's inexperience in the playoffs.
That's a good point.
I also, and I think he's a great young quarterback. I said yesterday, I feel like the Vikings are like 2 years, or like the Seahawks, but 2 years behind, if that makes any sense. They're being built in a rather similar fashion. Teddy Bridgewater is I don't want to compare him right now to Russell Wilson, but I think that it's similar in a way that if he can get going, what we saw from Russell Wilson, is it took Marshawn Lynch, and of course they lost Jimmy Graham, and some other things happened, for him to really get going and kind of put that team on his back. But he's been there, done that, and this is Teddy Bridgewater's first trip to the playoffs as a young, NFL quarterback. He doesn't get rattled. I think that he'll, but there's a difference. Anybody who's been there will tell you there is a difference. The other thing, I suppose, would be I think that the Seahawks have the better defense. Not that I don't think that the Vikings, obviously they've got a defensive-minded coach, and their defense is improving. The whole team is improving. It's getting better. I just don't know that they've got I just don't know that they've got enough pieces in place just yet but if they're going to do it, a Seahawks less Marshawn Lynch is the matchup you want.
Yeah, very true. They're missing the Seahawks are Thomas Rawls, who played in the first game, who had a good game against them. Who I think Christian Michael does that element of speed that Lynch doesn't have, but he still needs to hold on to the ball. And it's hard to hold on to the ball when it's so cold. And the last time I looked, the temperature was supposed to be negative 45 with the wind chill negative 157 in this game. So, how much do you think that'll have a bearing on the outcome?
Well, obviously the Vikings are fairly used to that, right? I mean, is it going to be a big shock to them? Nobody likes to play in cold weather. Hey, look, I mean, that's the thing, and it shouldn't be too much of a surprise to the Seahawks either. But if you look at the difference there, the Vikings, they still have Adrian Peterson. The Seahawks don't have Marshawn Lynch or Thomas Rawls. In those kinds of temperatures, you really do need a good, strong running game. So it could very well be the difference.
So I think, I hate picking my own team because I feel like I always jinx them. So I'm going to say the Vikings win 75-0. So Todd, who do you think wins this game?
Yeah, I think Adrian Peterson is the key, just like you said, Sharona, but I think the Seahawks will be able to focus on him and control him to some extent and make Teddy Bridgewater beat him. And like you said, at this point in his career, he's not the guy who's going to beat the Seahawks defense. So I think the Seahawks, I think they'll pile it on late and win going away.
Ted?
Wearing my Russell Wilson jersey, I'm going for the Seahawks.
And Sharona, do you have a pick for this game?
I think the Seahawks are going to win it, although it certainly would not surprise me if the Vikings don't come up with that upset.
Yeah, me either. So, Ted.
So, yeah, Green Bay started off the season well, but has had, some would say bad, but for their standards, horrendous second half. But still, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, and he's great. Or there's greatness in Aaron Rodgers. Kirk Cousins, we should have that soundbite. You like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's played very well as of late. But which quarterback do you think plays better in this game, Sharona?
Aaron Rodgers, I don't know. Well, I mean, it's a team game, right? Aaron Rodgers is a fantastic quarterback. I would take him probably over any other quarterback in the game, despite the fact that I love other quarterbacks too. What Cam Newton has done is fantastic. Tyrod Taylor, with what he's been given in Buffalo, I thought he had a really great year. But Aaron Rodgers is that dude, and Tom Brady. You have to mention Tom Brady. I shouldn't leave him out.
And Russell Wilson.
And Russell Wilson, yeah, and we've talked about him. Having said that, the talent around Aaron Rodgers has let him down too often this year. Losing Jordy Nelson was big. Their running game hasn't been able to get going. They have offensive line issues. Their defense is okay, not great, but it's okay. I just don't think that this is Green Bay's year. I think excuse me, making the playoffs in light of everything, all the struggles that they've had, is a big success for them. I think that Washington is going to win this game.
And we'll make our predictions round robin. I'm going with Kirk Cousins today.
Yeah, I am too. I'm
Lee?
going with the Redskins. I think the Redskins are going to win this game.
Yeah, and we all are, because for all the reasons that you brilliantly gave, Sharona. I mean, it's like dead on. I mean, I don't really see how Green Bay wins with the second half they've had. I mean, unfortunately for them, that's the team they are, and they're not really very good at all.
They're not that good. Mm-hmm.
So looking ahead to next week, Sharona, the Broncos have already named Peyton Manning as the starter through the playoffs. How do you expect Peyton to play?
That's a really, really great question. Peyton's obviously not the Peyton that we've all grown accustomed to watching over the very long years, the 15-some-odd years of his career. Having said that, a Peyton Manning-led Broncos, in my opinion, in the playoffs is the better play than a Brock Osweiler-led Broncos team. If they and I know Peyton is probably going to hate the sound of this, but they need him to manage the game. They need him to be a game manager. They don't need him to turn the football over. That was his Achilles heel this year, was all the turnovers. He needs to be protective of the football. They need to help him be protective of the football. The image that flashed into my mind was that terrible snap on the first play of the Super Bowl. I mean, don't do that, guys. I mean, don't do that to Peyton, okay? Their defense is really good as long as – I think that, you can say that probably for any team. And I know it sounds so simplistic, but you can't turn the football over. You can't give the other team that opportunity. No,
you absolutely can't. And I just want to point out that Peyton did start his first season for the Chicago Staleys, so he has been around for quite a while. And going ahead a little bit further, what two teams you don't have to give us a prediction on the game itself, but what two teams do you think are going to actually get to the Super Bowl?
I think that this is a year where really it's kind of an open field, and that's why I'm kind of excited about the playoffs this year. I already said it. I just, I'm probably going to be proven wrong. The Chiefs are probably going to flame out spectacularly, and I'm going to look like an idiot. I just feel like this is their year. I do. I've just got that feeling. Andy Reid needs to not have brain farts. Don't feed him beans, guys. Let him, let him cook. As long as they don't flame out spectacularly, I just feel like they could possibly do it. If it's not the Chiefs, it would not surprise me at all if the Bengals don't make some noise. But I suppose the Chiefs are the hottest AFC team right now. It's hard to bet on the Patriots right now. They dropped their last two. They didn't look very, very good in the last half of the season. I still think you don't bet against Tom Brady, right, or Bill Belichick, who is absolutely the best coach in the league and has been for some time now. But I would say on the AFC side, I just feel like Bengals or Chiefs. And on the NFC side, I'm not going to bet against the Panthers. I think it's the Panthers.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to make a prediction of the Super Bowl because I'll jinx both teams, but I totally agree with you on the Chiefs because ESPN recently had an article that said defenses don't win championships, and I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
they
absolutely
totally
ridiculous.
Win. I mean, did you not see the Seahawks 2 years ago, and even last year, really?
What games were they watching?
I have no idea, but the Chiefs have an excellent defense, and if they can just not turn it over,
even Tom Brady's first 3 Super Bowls.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, right. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, obviously there's some great offenses and some innovation, more spread elements in each offense, but the defense wins you the game. The offense, the defense gets you there, and then wins you the game, because if you beat the other team, that's exactly what happened last year. We saw it even in the Super Bowl, because once the Seahawks lost Jeremy Lane, I mean, they were hurting. The whole LOB was beat. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. But and you said awful first play for Peyton. I thought it was great.
Didn't the Super Bowl last year end on a defensive play?
Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Absolutely great defensive play. He jumped the route, and that's exactly what lost the game for the Seahawks. Absolutely. So, Sharona, thanks again for being on. It's always great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Will you let people know where you can be found?
Yes, you can find me out there in Twitterland at Sports by Sharona. You can check out my podcast, Bat Talk with Sharona. We had a Friday show this week. Only doing one show per week right now, but it's a long one. It's real. It's spectacular. We talked a lot of different things, and, of course, you can find me writing when I get the opportunity for Pro Player Insiders and NFL Female. And check out my Wednesday night show with Zach Law, Going for Two, and my Tuesday night show for NFL Female, The Zone Blitz.
Yeah, it seems like you're everywhere, and I actually have NFL Female. We have a guest on our Seahawks show that we do, Dana O'Gorman, and
Dana was on my show yesterday.
Yeah, anybody who doubts that women know their stuff as far as football don't know anything, because NFL Female is the place to go, honestly. And Dana's been a great guest. You've always been a great guest, so I would put your knowledge up against anybody else's out there, male or female. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks for being on, and enjoy
the
playoffs.
Happy Saturday, guys. Okay, bye-bye.
So that's basically...
She's certainly better than the idiot who said that defenses don't matter in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like...
Say that.
They must have been wanting somebody to read the article. I need somebody to read this article, so I'm going to say,
Good point.
That's right. Adele will never sell any albums. This kind of thing.
Oh, you know why? ESPN is resorting to clickbait because they got to make up that $20 million.
Yeah, really.
Right.
I hope it's true.
All makes sense now. Yeah, Sharona was amazing, like always.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like the rapper that goes out and commits a crime the same week his album drops. With the analogy with ESPN.
But doesn't there's no such thing as bad publicity unless it comes to TV ratings, basically, right?
Well, that's basically what I do when I go on job interviews. I always make sure I get convicted of embezzlement right before I hit that second interview.
That's right. Like, I know what I'm doing. You can't argue that. Anyway, hopefully everybody will enjoy watching the NFL games today, and there will be, we've still got some baseball news. At some point it's going to break, so Spettis is still out there, and we still have people out there who haven't signed. It'll be interesting to see what goes on with that. We're going to be right back here next Saturday morning with Antoine Staley talking more football. Hopefully the Seahawks are still part of that discussion, but they may not be. Wouldn't shock me if the Vikings won. Anything you guys want to bring? I mean, we have great shows on this network, first of all. The Seahawks show is on Monday night with Kevin Daggett, who's really the star of the show. Hopefully we'll be discussing the Seahawks win. And then Late Night Parent, what's going on this Wednesday, Ted?
This Wednesday, we have a very interesting episode, kind of different from last week's interesting episode, and the week before is interesting. No, okay. This week we talk about an industry that's a $2 billion industry, life coaching. We talk life coaching with Dr. Hoppe, and she's the CEO of Amazing Over 40. That's her organization, and we're just going to talk about why would you need a life coach? Why is this the hottest? One of the hottest industries, because years ago it was next to nothing, and I would say within the last 3 years it became a $500 million industry, and now upwards to $2 billion. And then we're going to talk with a technical analyst who was at CES 2016. So we're going to do a little health and wellness, a little tech. We're also going to throw in a little bit of sports. Still working on the sports person that I'm going to have on for a third segment. But listen to the show. We want to thank everyone that has listened or downloaded the pod The numbers are continuing to grow, and we want to say thank you for just taking your time out either on Wednesday nights or sometime during the week to listen to the show. But also during the week, we have That's What She Said Sports, Earnestly Speaking podcast. And I think there's some type of tennis show that's coming online that I wasn't invited to. Wait.
And
we
have a great guest for this. It starts this Sunday. It's called The Tennis Scene. And we have a fabulous guest. Todd, you want to tell us who the guest is?
No, I don't.
Well, that's rude. That's just rude.
You tell us who the guest is. I was checked out. It's 11:05. The show's over.
Todd got the guest. Tell us who the guest is.
No, I'm not going to tell you who the guest is. I dropped all my notes.
Oh, my. Seriously? I hope you're joking at this point.
Well, I guess the guest will be...
I thought he was going to do it. But yeah, anyway, our guest is Bleacher Report's Marlisa, who writes about tennis for Bleacher Report. She's going to be fabulous. So what we're actually going to do is the Australian Open, Todd the Bastard. Australian Open starts next week, and we're going to preview that with Marlisa of Bleacher Report. So it's going to be fantastic. Definitely looking forward to that. The show was not scheduled, as some people have tried to point out, that it may be the week after the Seahawks' first playoff game. I'm not assuming they're going to lose, so let's just say that, because the Seahawks show still is scheduled for the following Monday. But, yeah, it's going to be great. And, of course, we have Baseball Beer and BBQ at 10 a.m. on next Saturday with Antoine Staley. HHN is great.
Can I at least listen to the tennis scene?
It's live, 10 a.m. next Sunday. Well, I don't know if you can, but it is live, 10 a.m. Next Sunday morning. But obviously you can hear it just like this show on replay on the happyhournetwork.com.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's our show. Obviously, we're going to I do want to thank Sharona again for being on. She's always fabulous. Seriously, great guest. It's almost one of those guests like you'd like to have on like for 5 minutes every week just because it makes the show better. But again, thanks to her for being on. I do want to. Our outro is always it's a call of Ken Griffey Jr.'s home run in the 1990s, and Dave Niehaus, who's a Hall of Famer himself, who was the announcer for the Mariners. So this is just kind of timely, but he was elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame this week. Here's our outro and Junior's home run.
The fans hoping to catch a little bit of the old-time religion right here, baby. With Junior stepping up to the plate. Here comes the stretch. And the pitch to Junior on the way. Swing and a fly ball hits to deep right center field. That baby is going to be fly away. The old-time religion lives. Junior does it. A 2-run home run.